Hi, my name is Delina Lee, and today I am going to share awareness in family violence and child abuse. This is some background on child abuse and neglect. Back in the day, child abuse and neglect appeared on a widespread scale around the world. Children were viewed as property and they belonged to the father. The father had the rights to decide the fate of the child, and the child didn't have any rights to decide for themselves. In the 1500s, a case caught the authorities' attention when two parents were making money while putting their son, a disfigured boy they called a monster, on display. In the 1800s, children worked long hours as cheap laborers for their fathers. They would often be threatened and beaten. In 1874, the case of Mary Ellen, a 9-year-old girl that was abused by her parents and left malnourished, was taken to the church. At that time, there was no such thing as child abuse agencies, so the church sought support from American Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Animal, which is crazy because animal had rights before children did. The New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animal was created in 1875 and is currently called the American Humane Association. The Children Bureau was then created in 1912. The purpose of this video is to bring awareness to many types of abuse and neglect children experience and connect them with resources to support them. The goal is to educate parents, providers, and educators and increase awareness in this area so we can advocate for children. Educate to advocate. So the 5 different types of abuse is: number 1, neglect; number 2, physical abuse; number 3, emotional abuse; number 4, sexual abuse; and number 5, we're going to be talking about some of the resources that we can provide for families and children. So the first area that we are going to go over is neglect. Neglect happens when children's basic needs is not being met by their provider. Those needs are educational, emotional, medical, or child abandonment. Neglect can lead to language delay because the child does not get enough interactions with peers and others. Physical neglect, which results from not getting enough food, shelter, or not being well clothed. Some signs of physical neglect can be irritability. Educational neglect results from parents' failure to support the child's special education needs and failure to bring children to school to receive the education that they need. Some signs of educational support is irritability. Emotional neglect results from failure to support the child's psychological needs in situations where they were exposed to any form of abuse. Number 2 is physical abuse. Physical abuse is an act of intentional physical harm or injury to another person. Some signs of physical abuse are cuts, burns, bruises, welts, fractures, scars, blisters, etc. Be aware of repeated injuries like bruises that can occur in the same area or on abnormal areas of the body like the ear. For example, people who have experienced physical abuse and neglect also experience emotional abuse. Potential predictors include stress in life, depression, drinking, and behavioral problems. Always remember that educators are mandated reporter, and it's our duty to report any suspicion of abuse or neglect to the authorities. 3 is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse and neglect is also called psychological abuse. This is defined as a pattern of behavior of someone who inflicts harm on another person that is not physical but affects the person's ability to function. This harms their mental health. Emotional neglect and abuse is difficult to identify because there is no physical bruising or lacerations to observe. Patterns of emotional abuse are terrorizing, unnurturing, child rejection, lack of support, for psychological and mental, physical stimulation, and forced to participate in illegal activities by adults. For sexual abuse, some categories of classified as sexual abuse is incest, pedophilia, exhibitionism, molestation, sexual intercourse, rape, sexual sadism, child pornography, child prostitution, and child trafficking. And behavioral signs. Some physical signs are difficult walking and sitting, sexual transmitted disease, blood-stained clothing, vaginal and anal bleeding, and pregnancy. Some behavioral signs are eating disorders, phobias, guilt, neurotic and conduct disorder, truancy, suicide attempt, withdrawn, depression, behave in a seductive behavior, reluctant to return home. Educators matter. Sometimes educators are exposed to vicarious trauma, which is trauma through stories, experiences, and being a witness of our children's experiences. Vicarious trauma affects the brain, increasing heart rate, blood pressure, releasing a flood of emotions. So sometimes we need to learn to cope with some of these emotions, so we can take a deep breath, talk calmly even when we want to yell. Self-care practices are good. You can talk to friends, you can do meditation. I like this quote that I read from the article. It says, "It doesn't serve anybody to pretend that we are teachable with no emotions," which I think sometimes teachers feel like they have to be. So just remembering that as teachers we are also full of emotions, and it's okay to feel some of those emotions sometimes. For the resources that I found for families local, we have Albuquerque Family Advocacy Center. State, we have New Mexico Children, Youth, and Family Department, CYFD, which is also very common in New Mexico. National resource that I found is National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. All the information is listed below the names. And then the child abuse hotline that I found that you would contact is 1-855-333-SAFE, which is 7233. A Girl's Life, Albuquerque War Zone is a video that we watch in class. It is about a girl who was raised by her mother in jail, her father, and in many different foster care. She was severely abused and neglected as a child growing up. Her mother poured bleach on her and would claw her back. She would break picture frames in the house and make her kneel on glass. She was dragged and hidden in the basement. She shared, and I quote, "I just wanted a mom." Today, Lynn is a mother, and she is working so hard to change her life and the life of future generations. Please remember that stories like this happen to the children in our care. Educating ourselves so that we can advocate for our families and children is crucial. Um, and let us continue to make positive changes in the world. And then here's the link to the YouTube video. So closing up this training, I want to thank you for your commitment and strong work ethic. You are an advocate for children. I hope that I have given you enough knowledge to help you become more aware of children experience abuse and neglect. And here's a list of all my references, and they correlate with the in-text citations on the other slides. Thank you very much.